What is up, people of the internet? I'm Aditya Sriram from Clueless but Curious, and today we have a very, very interesting and kind of important topic lined up ahead, where we are going to be talking about the role of clubs and societies in college life. This is a topic that is really, really close to my heart, and I kind of get excited whenever I talk about this, kind of like how I am right now. So, in this video, we're going to be answering a lot of questions. Everything from what is the role of clubs and societies in college life, and why should people even join them? What is so unique about that particular experience? We're going to be sharing our experiences with respect to clubs and societies at NIT Trichy, and finally, we're also going to be covering what is the scope for improvement and what are the different issues with respect to clubs and societies. So, a lot of exciting topics, and I completely understand that this is going to be like a very long video. It's around like 1 hour long. So there are timestamps that are there in the description. So if you want to skip any particular part of the video, feel free to do so. Although I kind of secretly hope that you don't. But yeah, who cares about me? So I genuinely hope that you get some value out of this particular video. So before I meet you on the other side, let's roll the intro. Okay, what is up, guys? I'm super excited for this video because this is a topic that's really close to my heart, which is clubs and societies and the kind of impact that it has had on our lives. So before we start discussing about this particular topic, I just wanted to share one small anecdote. Wanted to take you back to the year like 2017, where we were all in the stage where we were deciding like which college to get into. So back when I was in school, I was done with JE, and there was this period we had where we had to like decide all of these colleges, and I had two colleges in mind. One was NIT Trichy, and the other one was IIIT Kanchipuram. And I was super confused because in one college, which was IIIT Kanchipuram, I was getting the course that I wanted. I wanted to become like a computer engineer at that point. I don't know. And at NIT Trichy, I was not really getting the course that I wanted, which was instrumentation and control engineering. And I had conversations with like so many people at that point trying to understand which college that I should get into. And one day, I remember sitting alone in my room thinking about this question. What is it that I want from my college life? Is it that dream job or score a high marks in college and all of that stuff? And, at the time, the answer for that question for me was that I wanted, to be a part of a vibrant student community and experience as many new things as possible and learn from my peers. I think that was the kind of attitude that I had in mind. And at the time, I took a decision to join NIT Trichy just because of that. Because I felt that NIT Trichy had like a vibrant, very, very vibrant student community. It had amazing, clubs and societies, and I was really inspired by the fact that, students are building, cars, robots and everything. And I think that's what got me actually towards NIT Trichy. It was just clubs and societies, and I used that to convince my parents that that's why I want to go into NIT Trichy. So reflecting back on my experience right now, I would say it's
like I was just saying, Sadi, I went through the exact same situation. Like, there's not even one single difference in the story that you told. Like, even I had the same Kanchipuram and NIT Trichy in my radar. And the
That's
only
crazy.
reason that I chose to come to NIT Trichy was because of all the stories that I heard about how campus life at NIT Trichy is. So I thought about, do I really want to go towards a very academic route, or do I really want to explore what it is like to be a part of that culture that everybody keeps talking about. So that is the only reason that propelled me towards NIT Trichy.
Yeah. And if you look back on our experience so far, at least if I were to reflect on my past experience, I think I was able to achieve all the things that I set out to initially. I got all of those experiences, and I would say that I've learned the most through being a part of all of these clubs and societies and being a part of that student community. So, keeping this as the context, I think the first question that I kind of had in mind is, what are those real world skills that all of these companies expect from like an ideal candidate? Because everyone, after they're finishing their college, they want to get their dream job and think about their own career and everything. So let's start from there, right? So what is it that corporates actually want? What are the skills that they want? What do you guys think?
Yeah, so I think, I just want to refer back to the anecdote that you mentioned. So I was the opposite. I came to college expecting to get nothing out of it. Okay, so I put zero thought into which college I went to. So NIT Trichy had the highest ranking, so I just went there. Right. So I had zero thoughts about what I wanted to get out of it because I was more of thinking what I want to do after college. Right. So So that was me at that point. But coming back to the question, what skills do you need? Again, I had zero idea, right? But now that I've seen some things and I realize it, I think communication is a very, very important aspect in the corporate world. And I think that can be a whole video in itself. It can be like, what to say, how to say it, and when to say it. I think we should do another video on that at some other point. But yeah, the other skill other than communication would be teamwork. And I would say, yeah, so these are probably the two most important things, in my opinion, that you need in the corporate world.
Yeah, Chud, what do you think?
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so I was just going through a LinkedIn post today morning. I forgot who the author was, so full credit to the author for this point. But he said, he or she said, the most important skill in the corporate world is the art of selling yourself. And then when I thought, okay, that's maybe only salesperson require that particular skill. Like, how does it apply to everyone? And then the way he had put it is, every single work that you do, right? Let's take you're a software developer. The code that you write, you have to sell it to your manager that it's a good piece of code for it to get implemented. If you're, let's say, a consultant and you're making a deck, so you have to sell it to your whoever is in charge of your project that this deck can go to the actual client presentation. So everywhere where you see, you have to keep selling yourself and the work that you do. So that's a very interesting way to look at it. So I would put that at the top of the list. Number one is the art of selling yourself. And then what Vijay mentioned, right? Communication, teamwork. And one more very important thing is, as you keep climbing up the corporate ladder, it's very important to not only be able to work in a team, but also rather to lead a team. And leading a team is not just, delegating work, assigning deadlines, and then shouting at people's work isn't done. But there's a lot of other things that goes into it, given our experience at our college clubs and societies, right? Like motivating people to get work done, like building that team culture where everybody looks forward to attending team meetings and everything. So that is one thing. And then the last thing, very general, a cliche term, it's problem solving and critical thinking. Right, irrespective of what job you are in, what technical skills or soft skills that you require, it's always important to think on the spot, make decisions, and have that critical thinking factor. So I'd say these are probably the three skills that I would look for in an ideal team. Yeah.
So broadly, if you look at like a company, right, like when they are hiring candidates, there are two different types of skills. There are like hard skills and there are like soft skills. Hard skills are like all of those technical stuff. So I think that is also something that all of these companies really look forward to. But I think one thing that most of college students forget that is the soft skills part. Handling people, handling time, making important decisions, or how do you make all of these decisions is kind of very important. And I think one important thing is that people skills, which not many people genuinely like focus on. Like small things like having empathy, humility, the basic human tenets like being kind to other people, your ability to motivate other people, how do you negotiate and resolve conflict within a team, right? All of these things are also very, very important when it comes to long term. Like your career is kind of going to be like 20-30 years long, and it's important for people to kind of have all of these skills. So interesting thoughts. So let's now that we kind of have an understanding of what are the different skills that companies want, or how do you thrive in the corporate world, let's look back at our college experiences and reflect on it and see where there were so many different avenues where we learned so many different things in college, but which was like the most helpful avenue for you where you learned all of these skills?
For me, it was definitely not the classroom.
Yeah.
So I think I've learned a lot. I think, from the groups that I was in, right? The people I talked to, the groups I was in, the societies I worked on, all of that. Rather than the work I did, was, the interactions and the actual relationships that I built. That has taught me a lot. Another thing that I learned, the other source of learning for me was primarily hostel life and friendships. So, not exactly clubs and societies, but those are also societies in some sense. The community around you, your friend circle, etc.
Yeah, it's a great point, right? So you basically learn, being a part of a community and going through that experiential learning. I think that's kind of where most learning actually happens. That's actually an interesting point. Yeah. Achyut, you were saying?
Yeah, Yeah, I agree 100% with Vijay. Like, definitely the learnings that I got outside the classroom was much higher than the learnings that we got inside the classroom. And clubs and societies, it really, one thing is I feel it depends on the college, right? Like some colleges have this very vibrant clubs and society culture, and it's completely student run. Like I've seen a few colleges where you have to get a lot of permissions and a lot of formalities that you need to go through with the college admin or the professors before you can do a particular activity. So given the college that the three of us are from, NIT Trichy, that everything was student run and we were completely independent, left to do whatever we wanted to do, that was a very, very big factor in shaping our lives, the clubs and societies in NIT. Yeah.
True. That's there. I think we unanimously kind of agree. I think we have had like similar experiences with respect to clubs and societies that where we had like the most learning from. But let's not just completely leave, classes and everything aside. I think we have like kind of learned a lot of things being a part of a classroom environment and everything. But one thing that we need to understand is that everything has its own place, right? So classes definitely have to be there. Academics, professors, teaching, that is all separate, and clubs and societies are kind of separate. So considering that the most learnings that we've kind of got is from both these two different things, what do you think is unique about like clubs and societies that's not really there in a classroom environment?
Okay, so that's a pretty interesting question. So what did I gain from clubs and societies, or what do you think is there in clubs and societies that you can't find in the classroom? So I think the when we first talked about what are the skills required for the corporate world, and you mentioned things like emotional intelligence or empathy or trying to understand people or leading people. So these are actually some of the points, because even communication, you do projects in the class, you do group projects, you learn to collaborate in some sense, you do talk to people obviously in your class, right? But I've learned a lot from the relationships I've built outside. So things like motivating others, emotional intelligence, doing things, just doing work with the people that you like is not something that you can get in a classroom, in my opinion, right?
No, yeah, that's actually a beautiful point, because if you look at a classroom environment, everyone is trying to maximize for their own selfish interest. Like they want to score like the highest mark, and I think that's the only thing that they kind of thinking about in a classroom environment. But whereas in a club or any kind of professional environment, being you're a part of a corporate or anything, you're always part of like a bigger thing where you're working towards, let's say, a mission or a vision of a particular organization. And I think that's the beauty of clubs and societies, right? It gives you that early experience or that introduction to the corporate world, where you have all of these different entities, structures, and different things that you kind of have to do. You have like a established hierarchy where there are teams, and ultimately you're working towards like a bigger goal. And I think that kind of environment you don't really get in a classroom environment. I think that's the beauty of clubs and societies.
Yeah, so talking about clubs and societies, both of you mentioned some very beautiful points about what are the benefits of being in a club and society. But if we take a step back and look at how we get into those clubs and societies, that itself is a journey, right? Like we go through multiple rounds of interviews, tasks, and everything. And that, I think, getting into clubs and societies is a proper simulation of getting into a corporate, because a corporate or a startup, you can call it whatever. So because you have a rigorous selection process where only the best of the best get into that particular club or society based on their skills, and they assess both hard skills and soft skills. And once you get into it, it's like all of you have this mission and vision for a particular startup or something, and then everyone is working towards it, be it a fest team, a club, or whatever. So I think the biggest advantage of being part of a club or a society is the simulation of a professional work environment. And I think that you cannot ever get in a classroom, irrespective of any group projects that you do, because at the end of the day, like Sari said, people are there to maximize their grades for their own selfish interests.
Yeah, that's really true, right? So in many cases, I think the reason why we are having this particular discussion is that a lot of juniors these days, our juniors or people who are reaching out on LinkedIn are asking this question that, should we join clubs or societies? How is it actually going to be helpful, right? And when juniors actually ask that question, it's really funny that a lot of people are not able to understand the value that all of these clubs and societies genuinely give you. And the reasons that all of these people are saying is like it's that they want to focus on acads, and they think that by joining a club they'll not be able to score like good marks, right? How is marks even going to be like very important like 20-30 years down the line, right? So I think it's important for people to start thinking 30-40 years down the line and kind of plan a little bit ahead. I'm not saying that you should need to know what you're doing 30 years 40 years down the line, but at least know what skills you need during your corporate experience of your respective career, and start exploring all of that at college itself. So you guys want to quickly summarize, if a junior comes and asks you, why should I join a club, what would you say?
So if a junior comes and asks me, should I join clubs and societies? I'll say 100% yes. That doesn't mean you forget everything else, of course. But I would say that this probably prepares you more for the corporate world and for placements and for joining companies rather than your classroom. That's from my personal experience. But it may not be true in some cases in some colleges, of course. But this is my personal experience. It'll definitely help you for placements. By the way, for the viewers, if you guys want to know more about campus placements and clearing interviews and all that, we've done a video earlier. So I think we'll link that up somewhere below or above. So just refer to that.
Yeah. So if any junior comes to me and asks, should I join a club or a society? I think I'll first ask that person to assess his short-term goals and long-term goals. So what I feel is, if a person or a student writes down short-term goals, it'll be something like, getting a good CGPA, getting a good job, having a good resume and stuff like that. And if you look at long-term goals, I genuinely feel the long-term goal for any person is to grow his personality. And when I say personality, it's every aspect of being a human being, right? So you can talk about build confidence, build, let's say, empathy and stuff like that. And once the person writes down short-term goals and long-term goals, and then once he compares academics and clubs and societies, you'll obviously identify that every single long-term goal can only be satisfied through clubs and societies, and that is an automatic decision is made right there.
And let's not really say that's the only way to like learn all of these things, because all of the academics, they'll come and like shout at us. But that's a higher probability, I would say, for you to like learn all of those skills being a part of clubs and societies.
That's there. So I think disclaimer, not dissing any academicians out there. So this is completely from my own experience and the experiences that other people have with clubs and societies. So if you guys feel something, if you guys have a different point of view, feel free to comment it down below. We'll take a look at it and maybe even kind of it changes our perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. So I think if a junior comes and asks me, like, why should you join clubs and societies? I would say there are two primary reasons. The first one being that you get to learn all of these, technical skills and soft skills, the hard skills and the soft skills part. I think that's very subject to what club that you're trying to join. And I would say the second reason why you should join is because of the network that you get, right? In any college for that matter, or any company that you're joining for the future, it's very important that you have a network, like a group of seniors, your batchmates who you can always rely on or ask for help. And I think that kind of really goes a long way with respect to your career. So if you want to navigate your college life properly, we always go to our seniors and ask them like so many questions. So you need to always be in touch with the right kind of seniors who will always be ready to help you. And I kind of feel that clubs and society is an amazing way for you to meet like so many people from different walks of life and try to build your network over a period of time. So that would be like my two reasons why anyone should join clubs and societies. Interesting. So I think the next point that I wanted to talk about was our experience with respect to clubs and societies, right? How has it been? The three of us, there are so many clubs that we have been in like common. We have known each other for 3 years right now, and I think the first time that we formally met was actually in a club. And the fact that we have started a YouTube channel is because of like multiple clubs that we've kind of worked in, right? So one team, like the first team that I would like to talk about is a marketing team of a fest that we were part of. It was a cultural fest. So the cultural fest of NIT Trichy is called as Festimber. So we were part of the Festimber marketing team. So how was your experience over there? What was your biggest learnings from that particular environment?
So I think in the so customer marketing team was a very wild ride, and I think the first thing that it gave me was, as you mentioned, it gave me a network of people to talk to, right? And get guidance from, ask questions to, and all of that. And that's something that a lot of people formally don't get in college. I know we have like a mentor system and all that in NIT Trichy where you're allotted a senior formally, but that doesn't really work out for most people as far as I know. But I think clubs and societies really do give you a great network of people. So that's number one. And number two, and this is actually a very important point now that I think of it, is that if you do end up in a club, right? So we had a marketing club where we actually gained some insight into marketing, right? So often you can leverage that to get probably your first internship, because at that point you have absolutely nothing on your resume, right? So maybe if it is actually based on a real world industry or a service or whatever, you can actually, use that to open doors for your first internship. So I think that's also a great thing that you get from clubs and societies. And I got from festival marketing.
That's actually true. Like customer marketing team and the experience that I kind of got over there. I remember one of the internship process and the interview I was just going through, and the interviewer actually asked me about like the festival marketing team and all the work that I did. Like I organized one particular event, everything, and I was literally explaining each and everything in that whole process, and the person was like very impressed with the kind of work that we did, right? So that's true. You can use that to get a lot of opportunities. But I do agree with your first point more, like giving that network and also that group of like people who have like diverse perspectives,
Yeah.
and they are like-minded in like certain things. Like the reason I'm saying that is because I was this person who really do not want to get into core engineering, and I want to go into like non-tech roles. And customer marketing team, there are a lot of people who are interested in non-tech roles. I was not telling everyone, but there are a lot of people. So again, that network, trying to understand how they are working towards, building their profile, what kind of career they're getting into. I had like so many questions, and those were the first set of seniors I kind of knew in college. So I think that was like an amazing experience for me. Achyut, do you have any other points?
Yeah. So one thing that I'd like to add is being a part of customer marketing team was the first time in my life where there were a group of people working towards a common goal. Like I've never really had that experience. Like people don't generally have such experiences in their school life because it's completely taken over by academics. And then once you enter college, the first part of it is spent, just settling down, getting used to hostel life and everything. And this is the first foray into the professional world, right? And being a part of customer marketing team, one of the most important things is we directly started contacting brand managers and marketing people of corporates, and we actually started talking to them. So it gave us that insight into how to have conversations in the professional world, and our seniors are always there to mentor us. So that is definitely one of the biggest points. So huge shout out to FMT, as we call them, for giving us our first.
And one small disclaimer, like we're not trying to sell like any club over here. Like all the NIT Trichy folks, let me make it very clear that we're not asking you to like apply to all of the clubs that we were part of. It's just that we are just sharing our experiences, right? That's it. There are so many good clubs out there that you can definitely join.
Yeah, and one thing to add is, so till now we've only talked about all the benefits that you gain out of the club, right? But the one biggest thing being a part of clubs and societies is all the trips and the fun times that you have spending all-nighters just doing work. So that is something that you can never compensate with anything else in college. So I remember all those nights we used to spend near the location of the fest. We used to spend 5-6 hours in the night just getting work ready, putting up banners and doing all kind of physical labor work. And doing it with friends is something that I always look forward to. So that is something that you can never get from anything else in college.
That's true. Those memories I will always cherish, like 20-30 years down the line, working for like the cultural fest, all those late night stuff, working with friends, all the trips that we went for, the first party that we were part of, first trips, everything happened like because of the clubs that we were kind of part of. That's great. Let's talk about the next club, which is something that's really close to our hearts, which is 180 Degrees Consulting. In the final year of college, we were the heads of this particular club. And so I think that's definitely has a special place in our hearts. So let's talk about 180 Degrees Consulting. What was the best things out of that particular experience?
So 100% 180 degrees consulting is something that's very, very close to my heart. Like, given that all of us spent our final years from home, this was the only way that we were in touch with college and, with friends who we spent a lot of time with. So, talking about the club, so there are a lot of, I think this was the most transformative experience of my life, hands down. So I got to understand a lot of nuances about leading a team, what leadership actually means. Different people have different definitions of leadership. I found out what my definition of leadership is. And it really changed me as a person. So that is something that I'll forever be grateful to 180 DC for. And apart from this, talking about the work that we did as well, right? Sitting from home, we were able to deliver consulting projects for NGOs, and we did projects with, I think, 3 pan-India NGOs. And it really felt good when, during this time of distress, when COVID has hit the entire world and people are really struggling, the fact that we were able to optimize functioning of 3 NGOs and then that delivered impact to a lot of people in India, that is something that I feel really satisfied about. Given that final year is mostly spent partying hard, going on wild trips, but given that I actually did something towards the society, I can never ask for anything else more.
Yeah. So very, So that's a very, and that's an amazing point that Achyut mentioned. Actually, getting to get some work done and actually serve society, because nobody plans for that in their final year of college, right? Nobody wants to think about work anymore after you get a job or whatever. So. Yeah, so 180 DC has been a very transformative experience for me too. So before I joined 180 DC, my perception of leadership was just be organized, just know what should be done and delegate that, people are going to do the work and, it's done, right? But then, there are so many nuances to it, how to deal with people, how to manage emotions, long-term vision, things like that. So there's so much more to leadership. So this is something that really taught me all of that. But obviously, 180 degrees consulting also taught me the hard skill, which is consulting. I got to know about an actual industry. So I think that, if you're a part of a club or if you're leading a club and it's actually related to an actual job, I think you definitely have a very good profile for that particular industry at some point if you're interested, right? So I think that was definitely a bonus that we got. And now Aditya and I are in consulting, so we definitely leverage that.
Yeah, and actually, fun fact, me and Vijay, we were able to get into consulting and private equity respectively because of our experience being a part of 180 degrees consulting. If not for that, we wouldn't have been able to get into Bain and Company, to be really honest. That whole experience was completely transformative with respect to the learning outcomes also, and also the network that we were able to build. And I think that experience was absolutely amazing. So from a personal standpoint, I think the biggest thing that I've learned from my 180 DC experience was, the people skills. Hands down, everything from, handling my emotions, handling emotions of the teams, empathy, how do you motivate people, how do you resolve conflicts, literally all of the points that I mentioned at the beginning that we felt that was kind of important for important skills needed for the corporate world, right? So I felt literally everything I learned through this particular experience, and every time I think about my 180 experience, I just get super hyped and excited, because that's the kind of, the things that I've learned from that whole experience. And I keep saying this, right? 10, 15 years down the line, I will not really remember what I learned in college. I'm not even sure, if I'm the right person to be called an engineer. But I think the only thing that I will remember from my college experience would be the club societies, 180 degrees consulting, and all of the learnings that I've got over there. And I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to apply that, multiple years down the line. I think that's how transformative these experiences were for me. And part of the reason why I'm so passionate about this particular topic.
Yeah, and one more thing to add is, the fact that the 3 of us were leading a team, I think that was the first time we were completely in control of everything that can happen in a particular club. We spent 2 years as juniors in different clubs and teams, and we obviously have a lot of ownership with the decisions that are being made, but the final say always goes to the heads of the club. So that was something where we got full ownership and responsibility of everything that comes out. Right? And given the fact that there is no particular boundaries for the club, right? If you take just a small distinction between a fest team and a club over here. So a fest team works towards a fest. So they have a particular timeline. Let's say a fest is going to happen in October. Then they probably backtrack 6 to 8 months and then work for those 8 months towards delivering a very good fest on that particular day. But if you look at a club, right? A club is just a group of people who come together to do something that everyone is interested in, and it's more of a long-term experience. Like it can happen over 1.5 years. So that is something very different between the festival marketing team and the student consulting body that we were part of, and both has its own perks. So that is something that YNTC really gave us, I feel.
Till now we have just been focusing on a lot of technical clubs. We're talking about career, all the skills that you need for your job and everything. I think we have kind of forgotten about like a whole different aspects of clubs and societies which are based on interests. There are so many interests that people have. Your hobbies, like singing, you might be a bathroom singer. Like I used to be like a bathroom singer for like a couple of years, and then I took up like music in college and I started like pursuing it properly, right? So each one of you have your own experiences being a part of clubs based or focused on your interest, right? So how was your experience over there?
So one thing, guys, Saad is telling that he was a bathroom singer and picked up singing in college, but he's just being too humble. You can go check out his crazy covers on his Instagram ID, and maybe we'll link it down below. He's probably one of the best singers in college. So yes, very interesting point about the entire exploring our extracurricular interest, right? So we've talked about how clubs can help you in career. It'll build your personality. It'll give you a new way of life. But college is also about going out and exploring hobbies. And talking about our college, there are it's a very organized structure, right? You have different cultural clubs and different societies that cater to very individualistic interests. So I picked up, I used to play cricket in school, but was not really a big fan of playing it. And when I came to college, I picked up football in my first year, and I was part of the football team for a short stint. And then we all came back home due to COVID. So I think you can always pursue interest at your own pace, but being a part of this formal club or a society where everyone is working towards developing their own individual interests, it gives you that sense of community, and you can do it together, which always makes it a lot more fun. So that is one thing. And then the second thing is this also gives you a very big, again, shifting it to the career aspect, this also gives you a lot of opportunity to talk about the interest that you explored in your interviews, right? Because as we keep saying, maybe we link the placement video of on-campus and off-campus up above somewhere. So as we kept saying over there, the interviews don't really look forward to people who don't have anything else on their resume or haven't explored a lot of stuff. And people usually look to have fun conversations, and bringing about your interests and maybe finding common interest in the interview is always a good thing. And that NIT Trichy helps, and obviously every other college helps you explore in a formal fashion.
Yeah, so I think I agree with Achit on that. So, a lot of jobs, but again, I think this question is about leaving career aside. So I think when I answer, I'll probably leave it aside. But anyway, I was a part of the photography club for 2 years, and I think that was a good learning experience too. I had a lot of learning curve because I've never really studied it formally before that, and I think I got some of my best shots while I was a part of the club. So it's good to be in a community full of people with the same hobby as you, where you can discuss that, you can get away from your academics. After class you can spend some time on things like this, and I think that'll definitely add like another dimension to your college life and to you as a person, and you'll have something to talk about when you meet people even if it's for an interview or even outside, things like that.
That's interesting. So I was part of the music troupe of NIT Trichy, and back when I was in school, I did not really pursue music completely, and I was always interested in it. And when I immediately came to college, I genuinely want to explore, so I applied to this club and everything. And After that, I think I've improved a lot in singing, and it was primarily because of being a part of this particular club. But apart from, let's just keeping the singing part aside, considering that it's like genuinely my interest, I think the biggest learning outcome for me through that particular experience was, being on stage and entertaining a crowd. I kind of feel that that's a very, very important skill again. I know I'm bringing the career aspect to it in some ways, but being on stage and putting up a show, putting up a performance and entertaining a whole crowd, it's not really as easy as everyone thinks, right? And it needs a lot of practice, and I think that was one skill that I was able to like hone through a period of time. And leveraging that particular club, I was able to perform on like multiple stages, like inside my college and outside the college. I've gone to a lot of competitions, met people from different walks of life, and I think again that experience was absolutely amazing for me too. So yeah, that yeah. If I were to look back at that experience right now, I genuinely regret the fact that college life is over and I was not able to do all of that stuff in my final year. But yeah, so moving on to the next question that most people kind of have these days, right? So in the first year, or I'm not like in other colleges, the time period might kind of differ, but most of the first years they have this question where they need to decide which club to join. So according to you, what are those parameters? Like what do you think that first years need to keep in mind when applying to a lot of clubs, and how do they decide?
So that's a very interesting question. I think as far as I know, in college, most people were just applying to whatever club opened right in the beginning. So the goal was just to get into any club and not really look at, what the club is about or anything like that, and maybe compare it to your interests. So people were just applying, left and right to whatever opened. And I think that definitely needs to change. At least, I don't know what it's like in other colleges, but probably it may be the case, right? But at least in our college, I felt it was like that.
Yeah.
I myself applied to a lot of
and
clubs.
And also, in this video, we've kind of glorified all of these clubs and societies. Let me make it very clear that does not mean that you just have to be a part of clubs and societies, whatever happens. Yeah, like there are a lot of other things that you also kind of need to keep in mind, which
end of the day, I think so my advice is, if you know how to keep yourself occupied, you may actually, I think you can easily get away with not having any club as well. So it doesn't apply to everyone per se, but yeah, so my point was people just kept applying to clubs, right? And I've done that myself. But I think there's basically two aspects. If you're worried about how you want to choose a club to join, I think there are mainly two aspects. Number one is the work that you do in the club, and number two is the people that are there in the club, right? So when it comes to work, you just make sure that the work seems interesting to you, and as I mentioned earlier, if it does sort of translate to a hard skill in an actual industry or a job or whatever, well and good. But that's again not a very important point. But yeah, the work that you do, make sure it is interesting in some way to you. That's number one. People, I would say, is a much more important point compared to work. Make sure you spend time with a like-minded set of people that you can learn a lot from and network with. So make sure that at least try to nail that part if you can't nail the work part. Yeah. So that would be my 2 points.
Yeah. Achyut, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'm also guilty of applying to just every single club that open, just like Vijay said. So that is something that definitely needs to change. And given that now students are actually at home and attending colleges, and all these club classes are happening online, it actually is like it's an added advantage for the students sitting at home to go out and actually do a lot of research about these clubs and talk to people. Because in college, right, there's this buzz that if someone gets into a club, then you feel like, everybody's getting into something, I'm not getting into something, so let me just go and apply for everything. So I think being at home, it kind of changes that dimension of applying to clubs a little bit, which is a good thing. So that is number one. So number two is, one more thing that we keep advocating about, the three of us, is it's not necessary to be part of a lot of clubs and just put it on your resume for professional purposes. It's very important that whatever club you are a part of, you make sure you extract the maximum out of it. So even if you're part of just one club, but if it's actually aligning with all the goals that you want to meet, then you can leverage that one single club, put in 100% of your time, 100% of your free time in it, and you'll reap rewards to that extent. So that is something that everybody needs to keep in mind. You don't need to fill your resume with 7-8 clubs that you were a part of. That was a mistake that I did. I would definitely change that if I went back to college.
Yeah, great points, right? So if I were to answer this question again, just like Vijay's answer, it would be two different things. Whatever your interests are and whatever your long-term goals are with respect to your career, that's something that you need to definitely take into consideration when deciding which club to get into. But I would definitely prioritize, the people and the culture of their organization or that particular club, because I think that's very, very important for any club. Like how much they are valuing all of the members who are part of that club, how much they are focusing towards the growth of all of the members in that particular club is kind of very, very important. And whenever students are making that particular decision of going into clubs, they need to do their research properly. And I think research in college, you can't go to Google. You just have to go and talk to seniors as much as possible, especially people who are inside all of these clubs. Talk to all of these people, try to understand how the culture is like, what are the different things or activities that the club does on a day-to-day basis, yearly basis, get all of this information from like multiple things, and then kind of make a well-informed decision as to which club that you genuinely want to like get into, right? So with this being done, let's go into a bit of a controversial topic. So far we have again like glorified a lot of the idea of clubs and societies, but we need to genuinely take into consideration that there are a lot of things that are kind of going wrong. Right, having experienced, clubs and societies when we were in college, talking to a lot of friends, we kind of know like what's really happening. And then towards the last year, we kind of led a team. So I think we kind of have that unique experience to talk about what is going wrong with most of the clubs and societies and where should they improve. A bit of a controversial question, but I would love to know your thoughts regarding this particular topic. Akshat, do you want to go first?
Yeah, Sajay, I totally agree that it's a controversial question. So I think I'll have to think twice before anything that comes out of my mouth right now. So I think, so the first point where I feel not the club as a whole, but the people in the club are going wrong is they don't really know why they're part of the club, right? And that kind of creates an environment where let's say more than 50% of the people in the club don't really know why they're part of that club. They're just there so, they can leverage it for their resume or let's say talk about it in an interview. Though it's kind of fair on their part, that is not ideally a solid reason why you should be part of that club. And it kind of affects the entire team dynamics, right? People might not be really interested in work, means they'll slack off in work, and they'll not be highly motivated to look as how they can develop the club as a whole and everything. So that is definitely one thing that's going wrong with clubs and societies.
So I definitely agree with your first point, right? I kind of feel that, remember this point that we spoke about where in a classroom environment, everyone is like super selfish and trying to maximize their marks and everything. And I think that's kind of happening even in a club environment these days. Everyone just wants to join a club just for the sake of putting it on their resume, and they just want to extract as much as possible from the club, and they never want to contribute anything for the growth and the development of the whole organization or the club for that matter. And this is a huge issue with respect to the attitude of a lot of these students, right? And in the future, let's say you're part of like a entity like a corporate, you're starting your own company, you need to always understand that you're part of a bigger picture and you should not always maximize for your own selfish interests. Right? I think that's how like value is like unlocked in the real world, and that's something that people genuinely need to understand. And when people are joining clubs, this attitude should genuinely change. Like they should start thinking about like the bigger picture, the growth and the development of the club, what the mission and vision is, and how you need to work towards that particular goal. What kind of new initiatives that you could do? What could we do differently? Right? No one genuinely thinks about all
yeah.
These,
So I think I think both of you said some really good points. I think, it all sort of, for me, it all sort of comes down to the fact that, we started this video with comparing clubs to corporates, right? About how clubs give you a lot of corporate values, this kind of work you do may be related to corporate jobs, things like that. But what we need to sort of understand is that, so let's take a club as a small type of corporate, but it's being run by people who have no corporate experience, right? So definitely a lot of issues will come up, right? So even if you take things like, management or, as you mentioned, mission and vision, or corporate culture, conflict resolution. So all these things happen in a club as well. So that's probably a con of a college club, although it's in a more informal sense, right? And the thing is, corporates sort of have it figured out because they've been
Yeah.
around for long enough. They've dealt with this kind of stuff, and I think students have a lot to
Exactly.
learn. So now that I've started working, I feel like students also have a lot to learn while being in these clubs and running these clubs. There's a lot that they can look at corporates and adopt into student clubs as well.
Yeah, Vijay, I think that's a very interesting point. Because if you look at the corporate structure, right, there's always like a core executive team that, or the whole team for that matter, it's kind of there for the next like 10, 15 years, and the number of change in employees is like very low. But whereas for a club, every year the team kind of changes. And it's very difficult to have like a very well established structure and everything, and like guidelines, blueprints. And so your experience in the club is heavily dependent on the leadership team, or the people who are part of the club, like the quality of that. If that kind of goes low, then your whole experience will not really be that good. So I think that's again like a very, very important thing, or a con, I would say, with respect to clubs and societies. The other thing that I kind of feel is that like you mentioned, a lot of people don't really have that corporate experience. They just want to focus on the technical skills and everything, but no one thinks about the mission and vision. And as a consequence, there's no structure in most of these clubs and societies. Like there is no like proper structure, which I kind of feel that a lot of these clubs genuinely have to work on. Try to identify like different work streams, what their plan is, what their long-term plans are, what their short-term goals are, and what accomplishments that they want to do like by the time that they graduate. How do you grow this club and take it to the next level? What kind of partnerships that you could probably get with industries? How do you focus on learning and development of the team? There are so many things that all of these clubs and societies can actively do, and I just feel that you've just tapped probably 5 to 10% of what clubs and societies can actually accomplish. So long back, I was actually thinking about this one particular idea where the problem statement being that companies find it super difficult to recruit from a lot of colleges, right? So I was just thinking if corporates can actually partner with a lot of clubs and societies and train people and notice how people are developing in that particular atmosphere, and probably hire from clubs and societies, right? So I think that was like an idea that I was kind of thinking about like a long time, and I genuinely feel that it's possible. But just 5% of that potential has been tapped. There is like so many things that clubs and societies can do, and I think that's, if we reflect on our experience at 180DC and the fact that we were able to get into like a very, very competitive company, which is like Bain and Company, which is almost impossible, we were able to get in because of 180 degrees consulting, right? So I just feel there's a lot of potential.
Yeah, I think multiple wonderful points from the both of you. One thing again, touching back upon the points that Vijay and Sadi said, the leadership team kind of defines the experience of that particular club for a particular academic year, right? So one thing that the three of us, I think we did right. There are a lot of mistakes that we did when running a club, but one thing that three of us did right was keeping in mind that we are kind of responsible for the 20-25 people who are working under us. We are directly responsible for their experience in the club, their experience in college, and probably even how their career might pan out. And we took a vested interest in every single one of their lives and tried to add as much value as possible. So that is something that the leadership team must also focus on, given that in their final year, people are probably placed and they just have a lot of free time. So that is one thing that I feel clubs and societies should definitely leverage. And then the second thing that I felt is adding back to this point where there's no really set mission and vision like the actual corporate world. I've seen a lot of teams and clubs and teams just following whatever the previous leadership team did, or just following whatever has been happening for the past 5 years in the club. The innovation factor, or what can be done by the club that's completely new, that has not been tapped into, is something that a lot of clubs and societies are missing because they just want to follow whatever has been happening, right? So this kind of, I think the best quality in a leader of a club might be that those people should be rebels, as in they should question every single convention and go against the wave and just kind of try to do whatever seems impossible. And if clubs and societies function that way, then I think, things might happen that people can not have imagined.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of a combination of both like first principles thinking and not like following traditions. This is not really specific to just like clubs and societies, it's for any organization for that matter. Because I was reading this book the other day. It's like an autobiography of the CEO of Disney, and he was telling he made this very powerful statement, right? Traditions is what kills organizations. And just blindly following traditions of the past without actually knowing why you're doing certain things it's a very, very terrible way of going in with it. Like that's where first principles thinking kind of comes into the picture, where you need to think about like any decision that you're making from scratch and be like super innovative with it, creative with it, and come up with like new ideas always, and not just like blindly follow what happened in the past.
Yeah, so I think I just want to add one point for the audience who's watching. We don't really want to come across as perfect people, and we don't really want to come across as people who's boasting about what's wrong with clubs and societies. So with utmost humility, we are accepting the fact that maybe out of the cons that we listed, we probably did all of them, and then we realized we've made a mistake, and here we are just reflecting back upon the mistakes that we did. And so you guys don't really need to take this as advice. It's just coming from people who are reflecting back on their experience and then sharing what went wrong, so that you guys maybe don't do the same mistake. So utmost humility from the three of us. There's no no boasting factor involved at all over here.
Yeah, great. So coming to the last question for this video, which is basically how should students make the best out of their time being a part of a club or society? What should they do? What kind of attitude should they have?
Okay, so that's a good question, and I think this is something that that applies to every student in any sort of club, right? So whatever club you're in, as you mentioned earlier, number one would be not to go in for very specific, tangible, selfish benefits. That would be one point. And as Achyut mentioned earlier, so I feel like we've sort of summarized everything, but at some point in the video. But the second point would be, you have to sort of believe or have faith that you will get out of the club what you put into it. So, so you don't have to make your achievements completely separate from the club, but you sort of try to achieve things through your work at the club. So I think these would be 2 points that I have for anyone who's trying to make the best out of their club or society experiences.
Yeah, that's great. Achyut, do you have any closing thoughts?
So I think intuitively for any student, right, going into college, they just want to come out with a dream job or get their dream admit. And when we tell don't go into clubs for your own personal selfish interest, it kind of seems counterintuitive. But I think that is the best. Like if you actually go into a club or a society without having any any really specific goals that you want to achieve, like Vijay said, that's when you actually get so many rewards thrown at you that you wouldn't have got if you actually went into the club with specific goals, right? Because you would have limited yourself to achieving, let's say, 2 or 3 goals, and you will just achieve that if you work towards it. But if you actually go into a club looking to develop the entire organization as a whole, you get those 3 things along with 10, 12 different things that you never would have thought about. So I think that is my number one point. And number 2 is be a genuine team player. Like, obviously take credit for the work that you're putting in, but genuinely feel that everything that comes out of the club or the team, right, is because of everyone there. Because one thing that I've observed is I might be doing good work, but if not for the people around me who are motivating me to do work, or if not for the people around me who I was just having fun with, then I probably would not have spent time doing that work. So genuinely be grateful and thankful for every single person in the club. Build relationships, because that is going to last a lifetime. Your work is like going to get over in a year, but the relationships that you build will last for a lifetime.
Yeah, that's really, really deep stuff, but yeah, genuinely true. And I think with that said, we have kind of come to the end of this video. I think we've had like an amazing conversation about this particular topic, and I genuinely hope that it was helpful, to a lot of people watching this particular video. So yeah, that's about it, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching till the end of this video. I genuinely hope that you got some value out of this. If you genuinely did, please make sure that you like, share, comment, subscribe, and show us some love. Come on. Like, I think we're just like desperate at this point.